This panel tonight is part of the Museum of Sonoma County's ongoing efforts to promote healing and to provide a forum for people who have been affected by fires in our area. The experience of 2017 forever changed our community, but by bringing together people and holding panels like this one tonight, I hope that we can all be inspired to support and care for each other. And now I would like to introduce our fabulous moderator for tonight, Dana Hsu. Without Dana's efforts, tonight's panel would not have been possible for the museum to present to everyone. So Dana, we truly appreciate you. Dana currently serves as an oral historian and is also an archaeologist with the Anthropological Studies Center at Sonoma State University. Take it away, Dana.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and thank you to the Museum of Sonoma County for hosting us and giving us this opportunity to share these stories with the community, especially now as we are commemorating the 3-year anniversary of the North Bay fires and are still in the midst of one of the worst fire seasons on record. I think the glass fire's not going to be completely contained until next week, and I know that these high temperatures and crazy winds oftentimes get people quite nervous, and rightly so. But we hope that these stories of Cremains recovery highlight a sense of community, of innovation, of empathy, and especially of resilience. And what we really hope is that it offers hope and a path towards healing. As Stacy mentioned, my name is Dana Hsu, and I am an oral historian and archaeologist at the Anthropological Studies Center at Sonoma State University. And my involvement in Cremains recovery, which has been made possible through grant support from California Humanities, involves documenting the experiences and process of Cremains recovery through oral histories of those involved. And our panelists here tonight represent these groups of people involved, including those who are responsible for essentially pioneering this process. So joining us this evening is Alex DeGiorgi, co-founder with Risa DeGiorgi of Alta Heritage Foundation, Lynn Engelbert, associate with Alta Heritage Foundation and dog handler with the Institute for Canine Forensics, and Nick and Pan Rasmussen, whose family are Tubbs fire survivors. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. Before we begin, though, I think that the best thing to do is answer a question that might be on the minds of many people in our audience, and that might be, what exactly is Cremains recovery? So to start with, the term cremains refers to cremated human remains, or the ashes that are left after a person is cremated. So in terms of how this relates to wildfires, what often happens is that during these frantic moments when people are being evacuated or their homes and lives are being threatened by wildfires, the cremains that many people keep in their homes are often left behind. And in the tragic event that this home is destroyed, these cremains are seemingly lost along with it. But that is where the new and innovative process of Cremains recovery comes into play. Working together, archaeologists and forensic canine teams have been able to locate and recover cremains from within destroyed homes. So they're literally removing cremated ashes from the ashes and rubble of burnt homes and returning these cremains of loved ones to their families. I think it's astounding that this is possible. I think it's amazing, and it blew my mind when I first heard about it. And some of the first questions that came into my mind when I heard about it was, how? How is this done? And how did anyone even think to do this? And so to answer those questions, I will turn to Alex, who could tell us about the origins of this project and a little bit about the process. Oh, and before we begin that, I'd like to let the audience know that if you have any questions throughout this panel, feel free to put them into the chat. There will also be a time for questions and answers afterwards, at which time you could raise your hand and unmute and actually ask them live as well. So, sorry, Alex, go ahead. If you could give us just a little bit about how this all began.
Okay, so how it began was at the Tubbs Fire. And I share an office in downtown Santa Rosa in the Carlisle Macy building. You know, it's on Railroad Square. And one of the people that works, one of the engineers that works in my office had lost his home in Coffey Park. He was very distraught. And, you know, he came over wondering if, you know, asking me, is there anything that can be done, you know? And I'm thinking, man, I just don't know. But I'll ask around, and it popped into my mind that one of the archaeologists that we work with, she's involved in the Amelia Earhart search at Nicamaru. And they had recently brought a canine forensic team out there to search for Amelia's remains. So I thought, I'll reach out to my archaeologist friend, they'll connect us with the dog team, maybe we can work something out. And that's how we connected with Lynn and the Institute for Canine Forensics. We connected my friend with Lynn, and Lynn came out with her dogs. I wasn't involved at this point except to connect these people. Lynn went into Coffee Park, and together with Piper, they found both my friend's mom and dad. And he was very happy to get those back because he felt sad that he wasn't able to follow through with what his parents' wishes were, and now he could. And then from there, it kind of has really flourished. We did several recoveries, and Lynn did that recovery, and then we did a few more in Santa Rosa. It made the Press Democrat, got quite a bit of attention, and then there was a flurry of emails, phone calls, asking for help. And that's really the origin story. We, at some point, we ended up with 25 wildfire victims asking us to dig through their houses. We organized a team of volunteers. I think some 20, 25 of us came out, and Lynn gathered a half a dozen dog and handlers to come out, and we spent a weekend digging through Coffee Park and finding people, and really at that point, this is not something that's ever been done before. So, we're adapting archaeological methods that are really designed to study the past, to respond to a disaster situation. And so the methods are kind of there, but we had to make things up as we went along. So that's really the origin story of this. And we've now been doing it for several years and have been involved in many, many recoveries in many wildfires throughout California. And the writing is on the wall that this is, there's going to be a lot more of this in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, Lynn, do you think you could sort of take us through some of the process? I know that it's evolved a lot since that very beginning, but from that first one, the dogs themselves are actually trained to find the scent of cremains. Can you explain a little bit of that for us?
We work with the Institute for Canine Forensics, works with a lot of Native American groups, and there are a number of Native American cultures that practiced cremation. So we train on cremated human remains. So our dogs already had that scent in their vocabulary when I heard from Alex. And we figured, let's give it a try. It just, instant. It just on that first sight, Piper goes, oh yeah, I know what I'm doing, stand back. And she found the cremains very, very quickly. And then it was my turn. And I'd never done this before. It's totally new to me. And asked the gentleman for a trowel. And he said in his garage, which was then 8 inches of ash. And so we got a tuna fish can and some Ziploc bags. And after we had located Mom and Dad and scooped them up with that tuna fish can that his wife found and brought to us. And they walked away totally relieved, totally happy, different people than they were when I drove up. Yeah. And that's when I went, oh my, this is big. Mm-hmm. And then Alex came in the next time that we went out, and took him a little bit of time to become a believer, but he did. And that's how we started. It was, yeah.
Well, and yes, in that believing, or, in that process of believing, you guys have definitely come up with, and I've witnessed this, so much more of a process. And I actually have some photos that sort of take us through. And so maybe you could sort of walk us through the steps of what happens now that you have this sort of process solidified when you get to a property. I'm going to share my screen and show some photos.
Okay. So the way it works in process now is a wildfire happens, and we send out flyers and notify folks that if they need help finding their missing family members, we provide this service for free through our nonprofit, and to contact us. And Lynn connects with the people, and we schedule a date. When we get on the ground, the first thing we do is interview the wildfire victim about who we're looking for, how they're related. Is this a full set of ashes? Is this a partial set of ashes? What were the ashes kept in? Is this a ceramic urn, a wooden box? And where in the home were these ashes collected? So here you have a picture of from Paradise of an interview with one of the wildfire victims, and she's clearly fairly distraught. Do you have maybe a photo of the dog working? Okay, so then what we do here, this is from Santa Rosa. The next thing we do is, so we've interviewed the client, they've pointed to where the cremains should be in the home as best as they can identify them. And then the dog and the handler work the scene. And the handler is not guiding the dog in any way. The dog is walking over the ground, sniffing the air, trying to detect the scent. And when they do, they alert. And this is what an alert looks like. The dogs are trained to lay down. This is Annie and her handler. Oh my gosh, Lynn, help me out. Chris, thank you. Has her nose pointing almost exactly on top of the cremains. The cremains were kept on the second story of a 2-story stucco home, which collapsed, and the cremains spilled outside of the building on the outer walkway. So we do the interview. We're told basically where to look. The dog alerts at a location, and the archaeologists suit up and get ready to go. So could you flash us that?
We can do that.
So
yeah.
This is that same building in Santa Rosa, and we're excavating through the ashes of the building debris, looking for cremated remains. What you need to know, now, this may seem like an impossible task to find ashes in the pile of the wreckage of a building like this, sort of like finding a needle in a pile of needles. But cremains have certain physical characteristics that are make them recognizable as opposed to the ruins of the home. Cremated remains are, when they're sent to the crematorium, the person is processed into a fine ash, and there may be small bits of bone in that ash still. And the mortuary is required by law. So this is a set of cremains that we've identified and we're recovering. Actually, there are 3 sets of full cremains here. What you're seeing is a homogeneous package of fine ash that has a sandy texture and a certain hue that's almost salmon colored or tan. It can vary slightly. Whereas the rest of the building is going to be a heterogeneous mix of drywall, burnt wood, all sorts of other things. And so you're getting all these different textures and sizes, and then you find a pocket of ash that's discrete. It's about the size of a loaf of bread. At the crematorium, they're required by law to put a stainless steel medallion in. It has a marking on it that is a unique signifier of the crematorium and the individual. So we know exactly who this person is now that we've found the medallion. So we've interviewed the client, and we've ran the dogs, and we did the excavation, and we do the recovery, and then the last step is giving these ashes back to their family members, which is invariably an extremely moving event. give them some solace. And then we jump in the cars and go to the next site because we're doing 3 of these a day or more. And we may have 5 teams doing 3 of these excavations every day. So the scale of this is quite large. There's a picture of Jasper.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Do you want to talk, Lynn, a little bit about sort of the role of the dogs and the recoveries that I've seen? You guys have been running 2 dogs. Is that something that is?
Well, I run 1 dog. Both, the one that you were at, Adela had 2 dogs, and Karen, who's on here, she's one of the observers or participants this time. She has 2 dogs as well. I have a young dog who's in training to do what is happening. And what you just saw, that's Karen with her dog. I think that's Echo. And that was up at Boulder Creek just a couple of weeks ago. And, she is alerting where she has the strongest scent of human cremains. And then there should be a picture in there, I think, of Jasper. There he is. So he kind of blends in. So we're really lucky to have gotten this photo of him. And so some of us work 2 dogs, some of us just work 1 dog. But one of the things that really makes this a challenge is when we ask the client to give us an idea of where the cremains were kept, we have to keep in mind that things move around in fires. And walls come down and the ceiling comes down and then the roof comes down or a second story comes down. And we have actually found an urn thrown 30 feet away. So knowing where to start is a good thing for us, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where the cremains are.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of a question that a lot of people would have is like, oh, are they always found right where they should be? Or does that, it's a big area that they could be in.
And another thing too is that I'm going to say at least 95% of the time, probably more, the urns are gone. They just don't survive. Very, very rarely. I think we've had 3 or 4 that have survived the fires. And Nick's brother was one of them. We were very, very fortunate in that. And a porcelain urn survived.
Wow.
Go figure. We don't know the answer to that, but yeah, most of them do not.
Right. Well, and Nick and Pam, thank you again for being here. And so I'd like to get to your story. Your mother and sister, Nick, lived in Coffee Park during the fires.
Yes.
If you wouldn't mind sharing sort of their fire story, your family's fire story with us, that would be great.
Okay. Well, I remember that night very well. Extremely windy. I'm going to start from the beginning. And I remember texting my sister. She works nights until about midnight and then she goes home. And I remember texting her and saying, make sure when you get home to lower mom's umbrella, her patio umbrella down, because it's so windy. I'm afraid the umbrella is going to end up 2 blocks away. So I said, make sure you lower that down. It's pretty windy outside. And never gave it another thought. And my phone rang, our phone rang at about 1 a.m. And it was my sister. And I was like, why is she calling at 1 a.m.? Something's wrong. And she was frantic. Said, the fire just jumped 101 and is headed towards Coffee Park. And I'm like, what fire? She said a fire started in Calistoga, which is 20 miles away. And within 4 hours' time, it reached Santa Rosa like a firestorm. And it jumped 101, which is a 6-lane highway. Coffee Park is a subdivision without a lot of forest around it. And I was just amazed at that. And the first thing I wanted to do was jump in my truck and go help my mom and my sister. She says, you can't get here. All the roads are closed. Fire department has everything shut down. and everybody that lives in Coffee Park is trying to get out before the fires get to them. So that idea went out the window, and that's a very helpless feeling. I couldn't do anything, and I'm only 5 miles away. So we were going back and forth, and next thing you know, we lose cell phone reception. Then you lose cable. Even in Windsor, all the phone lines were tied up. Thank goodness I had a scanner, a police scanner. So we turned on the scanner and got on Facebook with one of my, I think it was my wife's cell phone. We had Facebook and we had the scanner, and that was giving us play-by-play of what was going on. We were hearing everything, and we were just, wow. And so I didn't know what to do. My hands were tied, and I started thinking about my friends who were up in Fountain Grove and all these things. We found out they got out okay, but lost their homes as well. My sister calls me about an hour and a half later. Now it's about 2:30 or 3 a.m. And she said, I got Mom out. We're at my work. We're safe, which was a huge relief. Which her work is about 2 or 3 miles from Coffee Park. So they were at her work safe and sound.
Yeah, it took them that long to get out.
But
yeah.
That's what I was worried about, is she was calling me right after she called me the first time. We were talking before the phones went down, and she was like, we're stuck. We're in gridlock traffic. Nobody can move. There was like 1,000 people trying to get out of Coffee Park all at the same time, when there's not, the roads were all clogged. So it was a real frightening night. I get shooken up even talking about it because it's still so real. So if you want to maybe take over, Pammy, because it was something I don't ever want to go through again. It was frightening.
Yeah. We went there the next morning before they closed everything down, before they kind of got it together, and really didn't even imagine that all of the houses would be gone. We thought we would see, you just couldn't even imagine it. And then, they were all gone. And the first thing we're doing is looking for things, trying to figure it out.
Was it not until that next morning when you went back that you realized the house was gone?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't think it was going to be gone. We're like, there's no way. But we went in and everything was gone. The whole subdivision. I don't know how many homes exactly, but there was thousands of homes that were just leveled. So it was just amazing. It was a mess.
That's an incredibly harrowing experience. And yeah, of course, I hope that that you don't have to go through that again. I'm glad that your mother and your sister made it out. That's an important thing for sure. But can you tell us then how you heard about the Cremains recovery and how that came about?
Yeah, so it was through my sister. She had a friend that she was talking to, and her friend knew about Lynn. I don't know how, but Lynn ended up coming over with Piper, and we met her there. And the days prior, Pam and I and all my kids, we sifted through the ash. I was looking for 3 things. My mother's jewelry box that had her wedding ring and all of her special jewelry in it, my brother Ray's urn, and my dad's urn. And we were digging and digging and digging for probably 2 days. And the debris, like Lynn mentioned, it's so thick. Spanish tile roofs, all the debris, it's like, 2 feet thick. And I knew, well, all of us knew where the urns were, and we had a pretty good idea which area they were in. But it was impossible for us to find it, and I was giving up hope. And then Lynn came with Piper when Alex and her whole team, and Piper got out of the truck, and I think it was probably less than a minute, hit on it. Yeah. And Alex started digging, and the next thing you know, he came up with my brother's urn. It was all charred, still intact, but charred, and Alex had it in his hand. And talk about an emotional time. And not only getting my brother's urn, but my dad was in a wooden urn, and they found my dad's cremains that were already, you know, the urn was disintegrated. And that's when they explained to me how human cremains are a different consistency. So they started sifting through, and I have my dad with me now. It was amazing, and I never knew about it.
The thing about the fire is it took literally everything and every choice that we had. And for Debbie and Nick and Pat, my mother-in-law, it was devastating because they couldn't, you know, whatever they decided they wanted to do with those remains, they didn't have the choice anymore. And Piper gave us that choice back. It was like the one choice from the fire that we were able to get back.
And it's a very touching story, and I'm so glad that you have shared that. Thank you so much. What do you remember of that recovery, Alex and Lynn? And where were the remains actually found?
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, so, you know, Piper alerted in a couple spots. Part of the process now is we recommend that people don't go in to the home and start looking around, because it tosses things around and it can spread the scent and make it a lot more difficult for us to for the dogs to alert on a specific location and for the archaeologists to find a discrete pocket. That wasn't the case here. So Piper had alerted in several locations. So we had a wider excavation area. We had 3 archaeologists here, us on the right, that were working this area and widening a broader and broader exposure, trying to find the remains. And I don't know, I just turned around and found a box and said, this looks like something. You know, for me, this recovery was where the light went on. You know, I don't know if you can see it, but we're all in a state of shock. It was a very powerful moment, and it made me recognize what we're doing, and that this was a meaningful thing, and we have to do this.
Yeah, that is something I actually want to ask you, sort of as an archaeologist. You know, this is so different from what archaeologists normally do, especially because of, you know, why, the motivations for it, where so much archaeology now is, you know, predicated on compliance and, you know, stated federal laws and things like that. But these reasons are completely different. And so, you know, I'm wondering what sort of your reasons are and why this is meaningful to you, both personally and professionally as an archaeologist.
Well, yeah, so I thought about this quite a bit, and I'll tell you a story and I'll get there. We were working in the campfire and after up in Paradise, and we went to a house to look for a man, and he was a gifted pianist who at the age of 25 saved a woman from drowning, but he sacrificed his own life in the process. And his ashes were mixed in the ashes of his parents' home. You know, we went to another house and we found out that they were high school sweethearts. She had died in May, after 50 years of marriage, and she was kept in an urn on the mantle in the living room. You know, we went to another house where we were looking for 5 children. We found all 5 of them. The woman, this bless her heart, she raised handicapped children, foster children, and we found the remains of 2 of her only 2 biological children.
No, actually, Alex, her 2 biological boys had been killed on a highway down in Chico at the same time. And yet this woman kept on working with these children who were mostly unresponsive, but very definitely special needs. Yeah, it was crazy.
You know, so listening to these stories, the pour out of these stories is like standing under a waterfall. It's hard not to get swept away. And after months of doing this, I was really emotionally like pretty messed up from it. Started talking to a buddy of mine who's a therapist, and I was like, man, having a hard time with all of this. And you know, so in one of our conversations, I asked him, why do these people think this is so important to get back these ashes? And he says, things are not things. Things are meanings. Okay, and we surround ourselves with these meaningful objects that help define who we are. And when someone loses their home and all of the things that help define who they are lost, they can become lost. And so the Cremains recovery project that we're doing is really interesting in that, in a way, we're helping these people. When we find their cremated remains, we're giving back part of them that is their identity, and it helps them move on.
Yeah. A lady down in Woolsey Park said that you gave me back a part of my humanity when you found my mother. And that's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah. You know, for you, Lynn, working with forensic canines, you're often in challenging situations and emotionally charged ones, but this seems, your reaction to this and your experience with this seems different somehow. Is that?
It is, and one of the biggest way that it is, I mean, I've worked for years with law enforcement and looking for people who have probably died a violent death, victims of murder or whatever, and we're very much insulated from the families of these people. So the families are over here and we're over here working, and we don't normally talk to the families, so we don't share those emotional feelings. With this one, we're right there, front and center, with families like Nick and Pam, and we feel what they're feeling. Yeah, it's not the same. As they say in Vietnam, same, only different. Okay, we feel those emotions, we feel those feelings, and we understand, and that's why we do what we do. Because we want to help as much as we possibly can. And we've got this special dog, we've got archaeologists, and we can go out there and we can make this happen.
If I can make a comment real quick, I can attest to what you're saying. Is at that time, my mother was still with us. And finding not only my brother, but her son's urn, and her husband of 61 years, his ashes. You don't know, I can't even explain to you what that did for my mother. Even though we lost her 3 months later, that changed everything for her. And I really, really appreciate Alex and Lynn and Piper more than you can imagine. I'm going to cry in a minute, so I got to stop. But you folks are wonderful. And I feel like we owe you the world. And I thank you.
We're happy to help.
Absolutely.
And
We
thank
love
you.
what we do. We love being able to go out and help people. I tell people I love being able to help people when they need it the most. And that's how I feel in doing the Cremains recovery.
Well, this is sort of, so you sharing your story and being here tonight, making Pam is part of pushing this effort forward too, and it's helping them help others, you know. So part of this is, you know, getting the word out there. You know, the fires, like Alice said, they're not starting. Or not stopping. This is something that seems like a pretty somewhat permanent part of, you know, our seasons every year. You could attest to that by what's happening with the Cremains recovery this year. Like, what, you guys have a lot going on this year. You could tell us a little bit about that, Alex.
You know what? I'm going to pass that one to Lynn. So I want to tell you that Lynn is really the driving force behind this. She puts in the most time volunteering. She's interfacing with the wildfire victims and setting the schedule, coordinating dog teams, and she's been on every recovery. So maybe Lynn, you want to question?
And I think that also, sorry, we should point out that, and we didn't mention this before, but this is all a volunteer effort is the other thing. So all of that time that Lynn's putting in, all the time that you and the other archaeologists are putting in is all volunteer as well. And so, well, I'll let you make a plea for that later, a case for that later, but go ahead.
Just a little comment here. In California in 2020, so far, we still have a couple of months of fire season to go. There have been 8,486 fire incidents in the state of California, covering 4,105,786 total acres burned, 9,247 structures damaged or destroyed, and at least 31 fatalities as of October 2nd. That tells you how massive what our state is going through right now. And
The scope is giant. And
Yeah.
the need for this is growing too. I know that you're expanding your efforts by doing things like going up to Oregon.
We are. We have 42 clients that we're going to be working on up in Oregon, the 25th through the 26th, or the 23rd through the 26th. It was going to be 3 days. Now it's going to be 4. Being the client coordinator, I'm the one who gets the contact information, and I send them a questionnaire so that they can give us all of the information that we need to do what we do. And then we schedule them. It took my friend Adela and I probably 3 hours yesterday to come up with a schedule for those 42 people and do it so it's going to be kind of a cohesive effort. Campfire, I didn't maintain a distance. I talked personally to over 200 people that had been affected by the campfire. I listened to every one of their stories, and these stories were pretty much blood-curdling. There I was driving my flaming car down a tunnel of fire trying to find safety. Then I had to get out of my car and I went running, and if it hadn't been for the police officer who stopped and picked me up, I would be dead. Those are the kind of stories that I listened to, over 200 of them last year. It took a toll on me. It quite frankly took a toll on me. And I've started working with a therapist right now, and I'm trying to avoid going through that again. So I'm trying to be very proactive. I'm not talking to them as intimately as I did before, because their stories will just rip your heart out.
Wow.
Yeah, we're figuring out how to do this.
Well, and so sort of
in the middle of it, you know.
Well, so that's where I'm kind of throwing myself in, because the project that I'm working on, the California Humanities Grant, is about documenting those stories, about documenting all of this. So it's sort of good to hear, what I'm in store for, but you know,
Right.
telling these stories and sharing these stories, and I think maybe Nick and Pam can attest to this, is can be very healing for these people and for these communities. And so I think it's important to keep doing. And so as much as I can, I'll keep that a part of this process and, you know, work.
Absolutely. You're a valuable member of this team now, and documenting these stories is so important. It's not just about the dog's abilities and the archaeologists digging around. It's the stories that matter, that really we want to help get that record, because we're living through historic times. Back to your original question, what do we have going on right now? Quite a bit. We are responding to recovery in San Diego. We're in Walnut Creek. There's recoveries in Healdsburg, in the Glass Fire, in Vacaville, Oregon. Where else are we going?
Well, we're up around Berryessa. We're in the wine country. We're back. Well, you've got the Glass Fire. There is the Creek Fire, which is over east or west of Fresno. We've got some clients over there. So we're kind of all over the state.
Yeah. So we started a nonprofit like a couple months ago to do this. We have no money.
I was just going to say, okay, Alex, here's your chance.
Here comes the pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's negative right now, isn't it, Alex?
Pardon me?
I think it's negative right now, isn't it?
Well, so we're going up next week to Oregon, and we've got hotels for 12 people. We're driving 16 hours round trip. We have to outfit 30 archaeologists and dog handlers with PPEs to excavate 40 homes. And we're relying on volunteers and donations. So we have a website, we have a GoFundMe page. I please ask that you donate.
And we could put, I think, all of that up into the chat for people to link to.
Yeah, thank you.
But I guess maybe one of my questions is, you know, even with donations, you know, as a volunteer effort, this is maybe not completely sustainable in the long term. Do you have, you know, what is your goal, or what do you see down the line in the future for something that seems like it's going to be with us for a while?
Well, you know, the last go around, the campfire was so massive, and the writing was on the wall that this is a growing problem, and that this problem is beyond the scale of a volunteer effort. And we were reaching out to congressmen. We met with representatives. We really kind of tried to work the political angle, because what happens after these disasters is that FEMA gets involved, and the Army Corps of Engineers and Cal Recycle, and they come in and clean up the mess, right? They scrape up the burnt up house and take it to a landfill free of charge, along with people's family members, these ashes that are in the home, right? That can end up in a toxic waste dump, unless we volunteer our time to help these families that have gone through significant trauma. So we tried to work the angle of like, hey man, you know, the Fed should really step up and support this work, this important work. They're not going to do it because there is no regulatory trigger to do this work. There's no law that says it needs to get done. Therefore, the government is not going to do it, right? So we organized a nonprofit to try to get this thing off the ground, and we're seeking grant funding, which I haven't even started yet because I'm pretty busy with work and starting a nonprofit and going out on the weekends and digging through people's houses. We need your help. We need you to help pay for our hotel rooms and our gas. You know, we're not out, nobody gets paid. We're not looking for that. We just,
Our safety gear.
man, we can't keep paying for it and doing the work without help. So that the long-term goal, we are setting up, we're involving more and more people in trying to spread over a greater geographic area. So this coming next weekend, we'll be in Oregon, and all of the archaeologists that are volunteering, with the exception of the cruisers, have never done this before, and they're all from Oregon. And the idea is They dig these 40 houses with us. We train them in how to do it. They can now provide a local response to Oregon wildfire disasters. So we have now a principal archaeologist in San Diego. We have archaeologists in the North Bay, trying to get an archaeologist signed up associated with the University of Southern Oregon at Ashland. And we want archaeologists in Portland and Washington because our states are on fire. I'm working on the glass fire from Happy Camp all the way to Roseburg, Oregon. I drove 25 miles yesterday and never got out of the burn footprint.
Wow.
It's just catastrophic what this beautiful state looked like months ago. Anyway, I mean, you know, we see the writing on the wall. We want to help people. We feel it's a great thing to do. It's remarkably satisfying to help people. But without your help, it's not going to sustain. We need to figure out a better way to do this.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say too, if it's okay, our dogs are very, very specially trained dogs to go in and do this work. But when our dogs are done working on the site, they become therapy dogs.
Right.
I've got some of the most amazing pictures of people kneeling down in front of my dog, getting this huge sloppy kiss right up their face, and they are tickled to death. It just, so they're comforting. They're therapy dogs when they're not working. We have to kind of be really careful with that so that they don't get exhausted. But letting the client go in and say thank you. I think, Nick, you guys did that, didn't you? So Nick, yeah. So it's important.
Yeah.
It's important to the families to be able to thank the dogs too. They do the hard work.
I mean, this is really just an amazing combination, right, of skills and, you know, professions that are coming together and helping people. And so it's just amazing to see. And like you said, let's get the word out. Let's get people to help support this and donate to this, and also get the word out to people who might need these services. I know you're very overwhelmed already, but you know, we don't want to miss people who might be in need of this but don't know that this exists. And so, you know, all of you are helping to sort of do that, and that's sort of a big goal of mine with my project, is to get that word out there. So thank you all for being here and being a part of doing that.
I wanted to mention, I probably should have said it, that the nonprofit's name is Alta Heritage Foundation.
Yes, that is good to mention.
Good to mention.
But yeah, before we go to see if anyone has any questions in the audience, does anybody have sort of anything else that you'd like to say, or anything that we didn't touch upon? Nick, you said that you have your brother now. Are your brother and your father with you in your home now?
Absolutely. Yes, and my mother.
Good.
And I don't know if you can see this little doggy here. This was my mom's dog, Lily, and she's a Tubbs fire survivor, and Pam and I adopted her once Mom passed away, and she keeps us connected with my parents. This was their little baby girl right here, and she's a good dog.
Aw, thanks for being here, Lily. Oh, so I think that in the chat is a link to the Alta Heritage Foundation website. So feel free to go there. And I guess we could open it up to questions if anybody has any. I don't see any in the chat right now, but people, if they'd like to raise their hands, you could be unmuted and ask, or you could throw anything in the chat that you'd like to. Leave it open for a little bit to see if anyone has questions.
So the website, altaheritagefoundation.org, is where you can go to sign up to be a volunteer if you want to help people. You can sign up if you're a wildfire victim and you need help. And you can also donate. You know, if you can, any donation helps. But we're looking into some significant expenses coming up in the next few months, and we'd really appreciate some support. So anyway, Alta Heritage Foundation is altahf.org.
Is it a link to the GoFundMe page that's on there? Or is
No,
it?
that's a separate
Okay.
fund drive
Okay.
on social media.
If you donate on the website, it all comes to us. If you
Okay.
donate on the GoFundMe takes a chunk.
Okay. Okay. So go to the website, have it all go straight to the fund. That'd be great. Thank you so much for that. Well, I don't see any questions, any chats. No hands raised. That means you guys did a great job covering all of the, the details. Thank you so much.
Silent from the audience.
Or they're just stunned. Well, I would like to, Stacy, maybe you could come back. Oh, I do. Oh, there is.
Here's one from Alexis.
Alexis. Oh, more about the Oral History Project. Yes, absolutely. So, so my project is separate from the Cremains Recovery Project. Mine is through a California Humanities Grant, and it's an oral history project. And so we were all set with interviews scheduled. The whole idea is to interview archaeologists, dog handlers, and families who have been impacted. And we had interviews set up, and then COVID hit. So we're doing a little bit of a halt and a pause and trying to figure out the best ways to sort of pivot around that and still collect these stories and still share them. So things like this event here help with that. Our end goal, oh, is that Piper?
Oh, he's Piper.
Piper with her tongue hanging out.
Yeah. But our end goal is to share all these stories in sort of a compilation type video, to be able to share them on the website, maybe the Alta Heritage Foundation website. We're not quite sure where they'll live yet, but we want to collect and share these stories to do exactly what we're doing today, is get that word out, provide sort of this sense of community and healing. And like really make it known that this is happening and what's possible. So look for hopefully sometime next year for us to be a little bit closer to that end goal, figuring out the safe way to do it with COVID. So yeah, I'll keep you all posted with that. I unfortunately don't have a website for that yet, but any news or anything like that, we can make sure we get it on the Alta Heritage Foundation website as well. To date, how many cremains have been recovered by the team?
I have no clue. I don't know.
Well, there was 200 in Paradise and 40 in Santa Rosa.
And I think we had 9 up in Redding at the car fire, 1 in Woolsey.
Yeah, and we've been,
Hundreds.
we've excavated hundreds of sites and recovered hundreds of people.
Do you have sort of a success rate? Do you know what that sort of is?
No, we don't. And I shy away from that. What we have is a really successful set of methods. And we haven't, it's hard to quantify success sometimes. Barring finding that medallion, which is a definitive recovery. Sometimes you don't find the medallion, but you clearly find the cremains. And sometimes you find some of the cremains. And sometimes families have a keepsake set of cremated remains where, they took grandma and gave it to all of the descendants, and everyone got, a small bit. And we're looking for what really it would be nearly impossible without the dogs. So in those instances, we kind of would just harvest as much of the ash surrounding where the dog alerted and anything that looks like cremated remains. And we're transparent that this is the best we can do in this instance. We think your relative's remains are in here, and you should find some solace in that. And they,
I'd like to say,
they're very happy to have.
I like to tell them that the essence of their loved one is there because the dog had sent, the dog alerted, and some of their loved one is in there and they're happy.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're not looking to get all, which would be almost impossible. But some of the essence of their loved one is in there. We had 2 lots in Coffee Park that were prematurely cleaned, that the owners weren't told that they were going to come in and bulldoze everything. And those people, one woman, she chewed the colonel up that was in charge of that. She went up one side, down the other, and started all over again. Letters of apology from him. Sent Piper out there, and just on the off chance that she would alert, she alerted. I gathered a tiny bit of soil and told her that the essence of her father was there, and she was ecstatic. They just want something.
Wow. There's so much meaning in that.
It is.
Yeah,
Well,
as far as success rates, pretty high because I think folks are happy about what we're doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think sort of just putting forth that effort and just that possibility, right? And even that hope is pretty powerful, and it does sort of, it succeeds in that healing. So
One of our archaeologists came up with the term a memorial sample. And that's what we call it. If we collect something, if we can't find a homogeneous pile of cremains, we will collect something that is close to, or where the dog's alerted. And we tell them that this is a memorial sample, and they're happy. They're happy. We would rather give them everything, but if we can't, I mean, sometimes as the wall comes down, it hits that urn and it goes everywhere. And we can't find a definitive pile of cremains, but we're out there trying. We work hard to try to do that.
we do. And, that's part of what I also want to document is how hard that everyone's working, and how much dedication and commitment that all of these volunteer teams are putting in. So, I thank you guys for that. I thank you for your continued work and, this path towards healing and this opportunity towards healing that you are providing to people. I don't know if Stacy, if you want to come back in at all, but I do just want to thank everybody, all of our panelists for being here, and thank the Museum of Sonoma County again for hosting us and letting us share all of these stories.
I'm back. John I was given the opportunity, the ability to come back, and our thanks, the museum's thanks to all of you as well for sharing these stories, for giving us the ability to let everybody hear about this spectacular thing that you guys do. It's truly wonderful. Lucky to have people like you in our community.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Dana, you too. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you again. And thank you to the museum. And thank you for everyone for tuning in.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Wonderful evening, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye, Lynn. Bye, Alex. Bye, everybody. Bye, Dana.
Bye, Nick. Bye, Pam. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.